Well, hello everyone. This is Jeff from Whole Life Clinic. Just wanted to let you know about an exciting new machine that we have at the clinic. For those of you who have been coming for a long time, you may have seen a little bit of this or not experienced or heard about it. I want to just show the new version of how this looks, how it works, how we can evaluate things, how we can get you more information about your health. It's called the AOScan Digital Body Analyzer, and it is really something special. It's a interesting thing here. What we want to maybe do here is kind of go to the short version of it. In that case, I'm going to select myself here, and then we're going to go to programs. Now, programs, there's several that we work with: Inner Voice, the Vital Scan, and the Comprehensive. We always start with Inner Voice because there's always something going on as far as someone's sort of what you would call emotional context to whatever's going on in their physical health. There's actually a science of voice imprint analysis where you take a look at whatever's going on in somebody's mental emotional state will reflect in how their voice is put forth. Now what we do is a 20-second recording. That 20-second recording is all that's required for us to find some issues and maybe take a closer look at them. So what I generally have people do is several of these, but I'm going to do the quick version of just give you some boring information on it. So you click record and go. So my name is Jeff Essen. I'm a naturopath, and I'm the CEO, owner, and chief practitioner at Whole Life Clinic. Whole Life Clinic is at 14555 South Robert Trail, Rosemount, Minnesota, 55068. Our website is www.wholelifeclinic.com. So there's 20 seconds of recording. You can see what it's doing is it's kind of giving us an analysis of some peaks and some that didn't quite get as high. That's not exactly the kind of profile we want, but just again, for the sake of being that sort of quick and dirty idea of online here, we're going to take a look at 4 of the ones that were farthest off balance. The first 3 of those that are off balance are generally those that are sort of in your life, they're present, they're taking place in the immediate circumstances, and in that circumstance, these may be affecting your physical health. We do know that our physical health does play into our emotions play into our physical health. That's just another part of us that we need to acknowledge and understand. So in the first one, eyes aging may be relative to unworthiness and self-acceptance. The immune system, the adrenals, detox pathways, hypoxia or lack of oxygen. Lymphatic system may be due to cognitive rigidity versus cognitive flexibility. The microcirculation of the brain, brain function, and nerves may be from cognitive dissonance and consistency. So in that circumstance, those first 3 are, something that somebody can analyze about their life. Now in here, this last of the 4 is usually that thing that would be more long-term, something that tends to maybe be from childhood or earlier life, something that the person is trying to suppress, often a very subconscious kind of thing that's underneath it all. In this case, wet tissue, heart, lungs, eyes, nose, bronchial is relative to self-criticism versus self-acceptance. Now, what we can then do is email those reports. Those reports come to you just as you saw them here in a PDF format, which is just very, very nice. We're able to get a lot of information that way. And in that case, you can read over those and say, well, how would that apply to me? Do I recognize this about myself? Do others around me recognize this about me? We also do have the idea here. You can see there's this thing in parentheses. That's the musical note. So that's the musical note E. This one would have the musical note B. This one has a musical note A, and this one also A, but then there's sometimes like A sharp. Now in that case, also you take a look at the color. In this case, yellow is the good color to work with that, both from a standpoint of maybe having yellow images, but the frequency of yellow can do quite well. We also have then a second email that comes when we do this. It's called the RAD tones. Now those tones are tones that each one of them, as it plays from the MP3 that you're sent as an attachment, then becomes something that as that tone, you can hear it here, is something that helps to correct or modify or move that imbalanced emotional state towards the positive end of the spectrum. So it's suggested that somebody, when they get these tones as an email, maybe in their phone, they open up the file and have it play, and maybe do all 4 of them a couple times a day, just as a supportive, emotional, balancing kind of program. And again, we always want to acknowledge that emotions can be a very profound part of our physical health. Now, the next part is really fun because we end up then using a system of biofeedback. And that biofeedback then becomes something that we can use as an evaluative tool for a lot of the different systems, parts, chemistries, metabolisms of our body. So we have a headset at this point. We're putting that on. It's actually what's called a bone conduction headset. So we're going to examine a whole bunch of different things in our body. For example, the blood vitals report covers a lot of the items that if you were to take a CBC blood panel, have a lot of other specialized panels, these are the numbers that would come up as part of that blood panel. Now, what we want to see here is then, okay, well, in that case, what would that blood panel look like and versus the electronic, the vitals version of doing it? It's about an 85% match based on recent studies. So we go through the chakras, we go through gastrointestinal health, meridians, nutritional analysis of different kinds of nutritions and enzymes and things like this. Then we want to go through the physical functions of the body, just different descriptions of here's how things are working, all the kinds of, how you would describe your tissues and different kinds of processes in your body, and toxicities, which are things that, of course, throw us off balance. Now, in that case, we're going to do a scan here. Now, that scan is going to go through all of those different categories. For those of you who had seen the old AO system, it took an hour and a half to scan through just over 1,000 items. This scan is now testing over 3,000 items and will be done here in approximately 1 minute. Now, the important thing is here to understand, for those of you who aren't familiar with the technology, is that this is very much like radar or sonar in the sense that we're sending a pulse into the body through the headset. That pulse has a specific question about a specific part, system, process in our body. That's carried by a frequency. That frequency is recognized as, oh, here's the marker for that tissue, that function. So as we send it in, what we're looking for to measure is the bounce back. So very much like radar, when it echoes back at us, it's going to have a certain strength. It's going to have a certain amount of vibration that's going to be relative to then something it can be tested as saying this is either balanced or not balanced. So you can see here our thing is done. So in our blood panel, we don't have any issues. Does that? So we don't have any there. Now, this is based on the idea that I kind of have balanced all this out earlier, so there's not a lot here to look at. But I'll give you an example here. So gastrointestinal function, we had in the first scan, we had this. We did a second scan, and that just comes up, same thing. That means this is a pretty persistent problem. It didn't disappear here, okay? Now, the meridians are balanced. Nutritional analysis is good. And again, these have all been run through so many times that we're getting this, and they're going to actually make it so that it resets itself more often so we continue to get issues. Now, this one, for example, is saying a beech tree pollen is something that's a problem. And here, sesame seeds are a problem. Now, this is my profile that I've worked on very hard, and with repetition, there aren't a lot of scores to work with. That frequency optimization for a person who's got a lot of problems will show there's still some issues that, even with frequency optimization, aren't going to correct. We're not going to see a significant change in that. Now, of course, we can email that report. We can just punch that in, and all that information is going to come right into your email box as a set of PDFs that you can open up, you can look at with specificity. You can really get a good idea what's going on. Now, that's great because now we have the baseline set of descriptions of here's all our metabolisms and things that are going on in our body. We can better understand how all that looks. So those emails, as they come in, can be a way of tracking. Here's our one from today, and then a month from now you come back in, or a week or 2 weeks, we can then find out what's going on. Now, the comprehensive is where we start to get really interesting. This is where we start to take a look at this and say, well, what about specific body systems that we want to take a look at that may be things that are symptom loaded? We may have recognized them from other scores, other testing methods. We may have recognized them from other medical practitioners that we know for a fact there's something wrong in us. We want to take a closer look. So we have the body's arteries, we have all the different chromosomes, connective tissues, the sensory organs of ears and eyes, the heart as a specific set, lymphatic system, muscles, nerves, and all the different organs. A lot of these also are glands. We come in here to the skeletal system and then the veins. So we can more or less pull out any version of tissue in the body and say, well, what about this? And so in that case, let's just say, for example, I wanted to work on the digestive system, right? So I'm going to double click and that'll appear up here. Let's go a little bit closer now and say, what about the stomach then? So let's just take a look at the stomach. Now, let's say I also have a sore back today. You know, just overworked it yesterday or something like this. So I could take a look at the muscles of the torso and the hips. I could take a look at the nerves of the lower body. I could take a look then at the skeleton of the vertebrae. And that might give me a little bit more of an idea of some things that might be a little off. Maybe some connective tissue too here. Let's try to take a look at maybe connective tissue of the spine. Yeah, that should be good. So if we run these on a scan, now what we get is, instead of a generic measurement of here's how you're doing as a whole system, now we're getting down to very specific anatomical parts. This is a way for us to evaluate different systems so that we can understand, well, how are they doing? What's going on there? Let's apply a number to them. So you can see the numbers appearing here in the boxes. Now what that basically is a way to say, now we're going to assign a number. So the scale of measurement is from 1 to 9. 5 is the optimum score. 4 and 6 are within range. So anywhere 4 to 6, we have a good score. From 3 down to 1 are scores that are degenerative, undersupported, malnourished, hypo-functioning kind of items. 7 to 9 are scores that are high. They're inflamed, infected, toxic, sort of overexcited or hyperactive. They tend to be a little bit more on the urgent side when we see the high scores. So anytime we're going through here, we want to just check and see, well, how are these systems doing? And we get these scores that give us ideas about how that is working out for us. So we're going to check all these different things. We can go through all different versions of anatomy here. We can get very precise as to which kind. And I have to say that even though I've seen a lot of this anatomy before, I'm looking up a lot of things on Google, because these are things that are realistically quite, quite obscure as far as, the daily practice of medicine. Most people aren't looking all these things up, but there's some real interesting views as to how this all looks. Now, as you can see here in this column, we've got these all started off as black text or blue text, and they're coming out again as blue. The reason they're blue is because that blue is a moderate score. Nothing terribly wrong, nothing all that bad. And we can take a look at that and say, well, blue is not a big alarm crisis thing. But the organ digestive started off as blue, and now it's green. Green means it's actually been corrected by the frequencies and is doing better than previously. And we'll see what the old spine's like today, and maybe that'll show something. Now, this is also a very useful report for taking to your chiropractor to say, here's the relative health of that spine. They might get some clues as to how they can work with you as far as making sure that that spine gets lined up properly. Okay, now none of these had terribly bad scores except T1. Now, if you see that, we had a T1 as a 9, meaning it's quite inflamed. T1 is that first thoracic vertebrae. Now, in that case, it shows up red here in the list, and will show up red here. We have a score of 9. What we then need to do is go take a look at, well, why would that be? Why? Oh, wrong one. Why would we have that? We go to database. The database is going to be our ability to take any of these things and say, well, this is something we need to take a look at. So skeleton vertebrae. We're going to click on that here. We're going to go over here and select, here's all the reasons why somebody could have a problem. We're going to analyze that database. So what this is going to do is it's going to go through the skeletal vertebrae, and it's going to say, now with all this in mind, we have to take a look at reasons why it might be occurring. What are the reasons why this thing might be out of place, that T1 vertebra especially? And in this case, it's going to go through all the common things that are reasons why, or causal factors. And it's interesting to note how it portrays these. It gives the name, and then it'll say status. The status is going to be high cause, low trend, high trend, low symptom, high symptom. So it's going to give us an idea of causal versus symptom versus just its a current trend. Then we have a percentage. The percentage is relative to what kind of percentage is this particular toxin or reason why contributing to the spinal vertebral problem. Now, in that case, then we get this idea of, well, why is this all happening? We want to be able to then say, well, in this case, we want to take a look at, here's the reason why. So we're going to take a look at reports. And there we go. So it's going to generate these PDFs. Now, what those PDFs look like is, for example, and these were ones from before, so we have to go down to spinal vertebra at the bottom here. So in this case, we'd see these. Low cause, we're not going to pay that much attention to. And again, low cause, it's a 95% contribution, but it would take 5 years of that particular emotional context to actually have that system or tissue get worse. So even though no lust for life is a low cause item, 95%, it's really not that urgent because it would take 5 years, and there's lots of things that can happen in 5 years to change all of that. Low cause, low cause, low cause. High cause, though, pensiveness. Pensiveness as an emotional conflict would be a high cause. It's an 81% contribution and a 4-year span of time before that would go bad. But here, something more physical, sinusitis. So inflammation in the sinuses is a high causal item, 80% contribution to the whole problem, and only takes 3 years to become an issue. So as we take a look at any one of these, we can see that there's this list where we get the reds, and even among the reds, we have to then say, oh, what about only those things that are high cause? And even from those that are high cause, which ones have a high percentage and low number of years? So like, for example, here, enforcement conflict is a high cause, 56%, 1 year. 1 year is worse than 2 or 3 or 5. So in that case, we have the ability to take a look at those causal factors from that kind of point of view, which really does give us a quite an interesting ability to break down causal factors. And as we look at these reports, as we then view them, we can say, well, man, we can really kind of understand what we need to do from the standpoint of, for example, supplementation. Now, there's another thing that we can do with this, which is also really cool. We can actually do something along the lines of, say, as a side issue, I have a hearing issue. I can't hear very well, at least according to my wife. She'll say something to me, and I'll constantly be saying, what? What? I can't hear. In loud public places, I can't hear much of anybody's speech. And so I say, well, what is going on with my ears? And so some of the scores aren't exactly perfect, but we can then go to what's known as the database. No, we can't, because that's the wrong place to go. So let's do my eyes instead. I go analyze, okay. All right, so then we have to scan those, because it always requires us to have a scan, something in the scan list, in order to then go take a look at. But again, for supplementary reasons, we can go in here and take a look at these things from a standpoint of, we want to analyze them with a database of what would be a good nutrient, what would be a good supplement, what would be a good thing to take care of here. So in this case, we're going to go to database, and we did it wrong again. It's analysis. All right, how about the heart? Scan that. It's analysis, analyze. Yeah, it's a new system, just kind of still getting used to it, but I'm going to get this down, and it's really very interesting. So now we say analyze. Now, in this case, we didn't have a lot of heart problems, but we can come in here and say, what would be, for example, an essential oil that would be extremely good for that heart? Now, what it'll do is it'll then scan through this list of essential oils. This is by no means a complete list of oils. This is not necessarily the oils that I would always use, but this gives us an idea from the chemical standpoint what's a good match for the heart. Now, when we do this, what will happen is it'll scan through everything. In the future, we're going to have all the supplements that I carry in the office in the software. So I can click on any brand name, or I can click on just professional products, or I can click on detox items. I can put these into categories where I'll just be able to then easily scan through and see what matches in the body best. This is, again, one of those things that it's doing it automatically, and versus the EDS, this is a little bit more consistent about results, and it's a little bit faster to be able to go through large numbers of items. And then what's also interesting is it'll pick out things that you might not necessarily at first think, oh, that's great. You would think, wow, that kind of is kind of weird. But then when you look into it, and I've noticed this especially about when I test the essential oils, is it'll come up with things that you wouldn't expect, but then in context of things suddenly make a lot of sense. And I've been very impressed with its capacity to come up with things that I wouldn't have thought of, I wouldn't have tested to begin with on the EDS. It's coming up with things that are a little bit off the normal path here, I guess. So in this case, for example, bay laurel as an oil gives us a 62% benefit to this heart tissue. There's only an 18% stress on the body when you take it, and on that scale from 1 to 9, 5 being ideal, it moves that heart tissue to a 5. You take a look at eucalyptus, though, that's much better. It's 100% better in terms of its benefit. There is a 50% detractor, but again, it brings us to a 5. Frankincense, one of my old favorite oils, we have the exact same thing as the eucalyptus. We've got 100% benefit, 50% stressor, moves us to a 5. So again, we have a way to basically do this as much as we possibly can. But what if we said, for example, how about cardiovascular exercise? What if we went out there and actually got on the bike and started doing something? Would that help the heart? Not as much. How about diet? How about the paleo diet? And that is also very, very good. Now, what about, for example, acupuncture? So could we get the heart meridian in line? That doesn't do anything. How about if we were to say we're suspicious of the idea that maybe the spinal nerves aren't innervating the heart properly? Chiropractic helps the heart. And that's not bad. So you can see that we can basically punch anything we want into here to then get a better idea of, well, here's how we would look at different versions of things that could help our body tissues. So we want to just kind of go through there and say, that looks really good. Now let's, again, we can also go here. It's called the intelligent scan selection. This is everything that we had looked at. You can actually just have this go on its own. You could, instead of selecting things, push one button and then we can scan through all of that as well. So it's really interesting. And then again, we can just basically email these reports by clicking a button. It takes all the information that we put together, puts it into PDFs as attachments into a file. We can open those PDFs one by one, look at them very carefully. We see here, for example, this was a 3, now it's a 4. This was a 7, now it's a 6. We can take a look at all of those and say, well, where is there still a problem? The right anterior inferior cerebral artery. So in other words, we can take a look and say, well, how can we improve that? So there's all kinds of places here that we can really get some very interesting information. There are some things coming for dental and veterinary down the line. These are programs that are currently being worked on, should be available probably next year. But these are all things that are then expandable, adaptable, updatable. And so this is the new coolest tool that Whole Life Clinic has. I really want to thank you for stopping by. I would share that all of this then is also available from the as a remote unit at home. You can have a remote unit. You can actually borrow the desktop, run all of this in your home. If you want to talk to me about that or want more information, I'll be posting a separate video about that. So thank you for your attention. I appreciate it.